Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We have a fun special guest today, but before we introduce her, I must say hello to Jamie. How's it going, sister? What's
Good.
happening?
Happy to be here and happy to have our guest, Caren Paskel. Caren is here with us. This is going to be a very interesting conversation around spirituality and recovery. And Caren has been on a journey of wellness and personal development from a young age. She's a best-selling author, speaker, and founder of several wellness-focused organizations. She's a Vedanta philosophy master and lifelong yoga practitioner. Her journey began at 16 and led her to guide others towards holistic transformations. Despite facing personal loss, including her husband's death from cancer, and navigating business challenges, Caren has remained unwavering in her commitment to her principles. She now shares her wisdom through her businesses, Caren Pascal's Self Evolution and Youthful Longevity Yoga Academy. And her signature program, Caren Notes on Happiness, helps individuals build their optimal health, mental poise, and life fulfillment by aligning body and spirit. We're thrilled to have you here, Caren. And it sounds like your book, all around the title is The Power of Self-Belief, emphasizing self-evolution and education and breaking limitations. It sounds like that's really just such a very cool topic and really what attracted Paige to you and to have this conversation. So I can't wait to dive in.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here with both of you.
thank you. So, your book is titled The Power of Self-Belief, like Jamie just said. What inspired you to write that? How did your own spiritual and healing journey unfold to bring you to this place where we are right now?
This is one of my favorite topics. I had been on the path of self-development and yoga from a very young age. I was always creative, artistic, and I think it was 16 years old that I was inspired by my mom to take a yoga class because I had anxiety in my
Ah.
school setting. And that was the first time that I opened up to connecting to myself in a different
Mm,
way than I never had before.
Yes,
And
I
I
love it.
never turned back from that. I was like, what is this? And I could say addiction, right? I was obsessed with this connection because I was happy and free. And I had never experienced that before in all of my dance classes and all the sports because there was, mirrors all over the place. There was competition. You had to remember things. There was pressure and stress. So that was the
hmm.
first time that I just got to move myself. And because of that, I got to turn inward and see myself in a different way. So that began this spiritual path for me. That was really the very beginning. And it wasn't until I met my husband that I didn't even realize that I didn't believe in myself. And it was kind of just in the face of his self-belief, that contagious, it was a magnetism and it was a self-confidence. It wasn't ego, it wasn't arrogance. It was just this man was not hiding out, was not staying small. He showed up fully. He was vulnerable. And it was like failure wasn't even an option for him.
Wow.
And his upbringing was completely different than mine. He grew up with nothing and he became an entrepreneur at 8 years old. He started this lawn care business just to make some money because they didn't have enough food on the table. And that
Yeah.
was completely opposite of me. He didn't have education because he had to take care of his brothers. His parents were divorced when he was really young. It was very, very chaotic. And so when we met and I see this man coming from where he came from, just so confident, so determined, this big thinking, it was at that moment where I knew I had to be around it. I knew I had to be around it to move myself because my mission is growth, it's transformation, it's self evolution. And I was stunted by my introvertedness. I'm such an introvert that I just like to stay in a little bubble. So even opening my two yoga studios, which took my husband's inspiration and support to do that, I even kind of was staying safe there because it was just this, small area and smaller community. And when he got sick, that was when everything started to shake up and change. And I had this pivotal life moment of this, I had a decision to make. You're going to have to step up here and believe in yourself to navigate this for not just him, but for myself.
Wow.
And so, or you can go down the rabbit hole, right? And you can fight and kick and scream and be a victim. And what is that going to do? That's not going to help him. That's not going to help me. So, of course, I picked, okay, it's time. I'm not going to just depend on my husband for him to believe in me. I'm really going to believe in myself. So, I'll fast forward. And of course, you can ask me questions because I know there's a whole missing component in here. But to get to your question, it took until he passed away and I'm sitting on a call like this, it was a Zoom call. I had recreated my entire business. I shut down my yoga studios during the pandemic. I recreated an online mental training, spiritual programs, and started coaching people. And there was about 25 to 30 women on this call. It was a community call, and everybody's sharing their wins. And I'm sitting here going, how are all these people so transformed? I'm not like the best yoga teacher. I'm no guru, and I know a lot, but I don't know everything. So how are these people moved from being in proximity with me? How are they telling these stories of transformation? And it was just a moment of, again, this huge epiphany. Oh, it's because the same reason why I've transformed, because my husband believed in himself. I recognized that he was the example. I took the baton. It was inspired, for me to believe in myself, find that inspiration within. Now I'm living that way and I'm a leading example. And all these people see me believing in myself and creating whatever I want. And now they're doing it. It's the ripple effect. So
Mm-hmm.
I did not plan to write a book. Never in my whole life. I mean, I'm an artist. I love to create things, but never even a thought. And I loved blogging and stuff like that. But at that moment, I was like, that's my book. I have to write the story about the power of self-belief because it's so powerful.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. So it was more of a light bulb moment versus a dimmer switch moment.
Yes, it was
Wow.
boom, I have to write this book. And I knew it was going to be our legacy. It was going to share a story that goes on and lives on beyond us both. So that was very important to me because he died at 30. But it
Wow.
was also, I wanted to have something that was tangible for anyone who wants to start the journey and maybe isn't in my life, that they could have this book. And it's like the gift that keeps on giving. It shares our story, but it shares all of the self development that I experienced and achieved up until the point of self belief. So it was like, okay, I have these eternal values, universal laws of life that have created happiness and joy. And I'm no longer depressed and anxious and on these medications, right? And now I'm living this life, and now I have the power of self belief. And this is more about how I can make a greater impact and get out of my smallness and open up to speaking to more people, even with you. I would have never been here right now if I haven't been showing up fully, sharing my story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense. That's I think that's a beautiful testament to, how we think of these trials, right? And what you went through was, heartbreaking. Think of these trials and people think, oh, there's no value in them. All it does is hurt us or cause, long-term issues, but it's an opportunity for healing, right? And for other folks. And
Yes.
just by sharing your story, which is exactly what you're doing today. So how would you say, um, this process, right, of honoring it is sort of sounds like honoring a way of your husband's memory and keeping him and his story very much alive, keeping him, his legacy alive. How has that helped you in staying connected to that self-belief?
Well, yes. So if he's the inspiration for me,
Mhm.
by sharing the story, by writing about it was very healing, but by being able to talk about it and what we went through and him, it keeps him alive in my life. And
Yes.
that is something so valuable to understand because we all know scientifically, right? Energy is never created or destroyed. And so I don't even believe in death. There's just, two guarantees in life. I was just making a video for my social media and I was saying, you come into the world and you leave it, but you don't know when. And you also don't know what your form was before and what the
Mm.
reformation is later and after. So I already studied all this. And so I think I was prepared for death, but I wasn't prepared for my 30-year-old husband to die.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was a that was unexpected, but it was such a wake-up call for me because I truly believe, and there's angel wings behind me, that he was an angel in my life because I have
Mm.
such a strong desire to grow and I wasn't able to break free from my limiting beliefs. And he was you know, that limitless factor in my life. And that was the only way that I was able to change who I was and become a new version of myself. That was a drastic transformation. I don't think I would have been able to transform in that way and be who I am today
Yeah.
without him in my life for those 6 years, and even without the brain cancer and the 2 years of having to caregive. When you have to be a caregiver, your life is, I'm sure it's the same with kids too, right? It's not the same anymore. It's not just about you taking care of you, but you have to take care of yourself now in a totally different way. And that made me actually become truly selfless. I didn't know what that meant until I was truly of service in caring for him. And he was the one who nudged me to change my business. He was like, "You need to do something." He could tell that I had to close my studios and find a way to keep going in the pandemic in my field. And he wanted me to. He didn't want me to be obsessed over his health and be caring for him all the time. So he kind
Mm.
of pushed me like, go use your studio that's closed down right now and go make it your office space and go do what you need to do. And that's when I created an on that signature program, Karen's Notes on Happiness. I left the
Wow.
house every day and
Mhm.
most people thought that I was being selfish because I was leaving the house. But his brother lived with us and he was caring for him too. We had friends and family over all the time. Caregivers forget that they have to give themselves space. They have to take care of themselves. They even have to have a life. They have to have a mission, something. It cannot all be about one person. And because I was able to sort of balance that, he it gave him more quality of life to see me thriving. And I got to hear that at the end. The last time we got a 3rd-year wedding anniversary date. And I don't know, somehow, some way, this man with half of his body operating, hardly could speak, made it out. We went on a date and he told me, he said, "I'm okay to die because I you've transformed your career, yourself, you're taking care of me, you're taking care of business, the home, the dogs. You're making all this money." And he's like, "I don't have to worry about you." And he said, "I didn't even know that the one person I was going to impact the most was you." He said, "I just didn't know." And he's like, "You're a badass." He's, "I didn't even know you had this in you." And I'm just sitting here trying to take all this in because I'm like, what's happening right now? Because I was just go, do, create this business, trying not to think about the fact that he is declining and dying in front of my very eyes, right? And so it was sort of a distraction in a healthy way, but I was dead stopped in my tracks there and just realizing what this moment was. He was saying his goodbye. And he was saying, I know that my mission, I've achieved it because now you get to carry on. Like
Yeah.
he didn't realize I was the person he was helping the most. And when he
Mhm.
did, it gave him so much peace. It gave him peace to say, I'm okay now. I don't have to keep fighting to live, even though I want to keep living. Like I get
Mhm.
it. This is the end for me. And it all makes sense now. So it's a really powerful story. And that's why I felt like I have to write this. I have to share this
Mhm.
story because there's other people like me out there.
Yeah.
And I
It
got to change everything. And like I thought it was the worst thing. And it turned out to be not the best thing that he died, but it turned out to be such a gift for me to up level and upgrade and shift myself. And now, help so many people.
kind of sounds like you turned it into a spiritual experience for both of you. So that's
Well
beautiful.
said.
You and I talked a little bit before when we first met about the definition of spirituality, and I'd ask you, how do you even define spirituality? And it was so important to me because in our program, we have four foundational principles: the single ingredient food, the spirituality, movement, and sleep. And that spirituality is a big component. And we never, at Real Food Recovery, we aren't pushing people to go in air quotes, go to church. That's not what we're saying. We're saying you need, when you're trying to recover from something, it's an all-encompassing thing and so big that that's one component of it that we think it's important to not ignore when to have this big beautiful life. It's just when life kicks you in the teeth, where can you go to have some salve on your heart that isn't processed food? So you do you want to talk a little bit about how you defined spirituality, because it was very simple but very poignant and right to the point, and I loved it. So you take it from there.
Well, I also just made a video about this because so many people um, are unclear about what
Hmm.
spirituality is. And there's so
Hmm.
many misinterpretations, I think, and then miscommunication about it. And so what
Yeah.
happens is it becomes
Yes.
a very sensitive word. And
Right.
so it's
I don't want to scare
spirituality.
anybody. Yeah. I
Yes,
mean,
right.
this is the first time we've done a podcast on spirituality for the exact reason that you're saying, because we're not trying to scare people off saying you must go to church. That's not it. So,
No,
sorry,
it's
I
not. It's
interrupted.
actually, it's okay. It's such a beautiful topic, and I love to expose the truth about it. And it's so simple. It's so simple. It doesn't have to do with putting crystals on your yoga mat, lighting incense. It doesn't have to, you don't need any essential oils and do seances and
Thank God.
rituals. But you do need an altar. No, I'm just kidding. No altar. The thing is, you can do all those. And what I learned is all of those practices or rituals, if you want to call them, those are reminders of the spiritual. Those are reminders of what
Mhm.
you truly believe in, whatever that is, for any even religion. So, but what happens is people get all caught up in the rituals. They
Right.
believe the rituals are the religion. No, they're just, I always say rituals are just reminders. So whatever you need to do to remember who you truly are, or divinity, or whatever you believe in, that's beautiful. You might do a lot of different things, right? So
Mhm.
spirituality is just an inquiry into your existence. It's the moment you start asking questions. Who am I really? Why am I here? What is life about? What is the meaning of life? As soon as you investigate, I call it's an investigation. That's what spirituality is, into yourself, into life and what it is. And so that investigation, that inquiry is the moment one turns spiritual. It's not going to temple,
Love
like you
it.
said. It's not praying. It's not any of these rituals. It's not wearing a Jewish star or a cross or a bindi on your forehead. In fact, those little bindis, those are so that when two people look at each other and they see that, it's a reminder of the divinity, of the conscious energy. So it's really just So simple. Your spirituality is the moment you start asking questions about yourself and life and the meaning.
I love that. I love that. It was just so simple and poignant and just spot on. I happen to be a church goer and I've always done that all my life and that's what works for me. And I know other people say I'd rather just be in nature. That's fine. For me, what I have found with organized religion is I have the opportunity for reminders and then opportunities to get outside myself and usually serve other people. So that system works for me. But you brought that up about reminders, and that's what I get out of my spiritual practice when I practice like I do. So yeah, I like that very much. But the idea of spirituality just being introspection and awareness about yourself and seeking for greater knowledge, I just love that so
Yeah,
much.
what a great definition. And I think it is like the way when you describe that, Karen, and when I read Paige's notes about how like that description made so much sense to her. It's like it reminded me of like a punctuation mark in life. It's
Ah,
that point in life, maybe, or a road diverging, or whatever you want to call it, where life no longer looks the same. You can make a different choice. And that I had that awakening. I was in my late 30s and I had, grown up in a religion, in Catholicism, and it was, a lot of cultural and societal norms and familial norms that were imposed with that. So um I found myself backing away from the teachings that I had learned in religion. And I had thought
Yes.
religion was spirituality, spirituality was religion and the church and all the, but when I was growing up, it was the whole priest scandal was happening in the Catholic Church. And that just rocked my world. I just thought, how is this possible? How? And I was living it. I was watching, young boys that were in my community living this nightmare. And it was just, I think it really rocked me I thought religion, spirituality,
Hmm.
all of it was all tied to this, you know, um, this corruption and this hypocrisy. And so I just rejected all of it for probably 20 years. And I did not discriminate against people who followed a path and had different, maybe however that looked for them, spiritual practices, religious practices. I didn't discriminate. I thought, yeah, hey, live and let live. But for me, it doesn't work. And then when I was in my late 30s, I just realized that there was this sort of calm, steady presence in my life that that was there and helped me and was helping me and guided me. It was undeniable. And I realized that I had to walk a spiritual path. It did lead me back in some ways to religious practices, but it's much, much deeper than that for me. It is much deeper and much more connected to other humans and to God and to, the universe and to nature and to energy. And I mean, it's just much deeper than religion is for me. So I think, but it is like that point, right? That divergent point, where people have realized that they do have a choice. And I feel like, in Paige, I understand why, some of us are afraid to use that word. And I totally get it because it can be a very divisive word, but I believe it can be such a gift. And I think to live, like, was it, Plato or Aristotle that said an unexamined life, or maybe Socrates, an unexamined life is not a life worth living. I think
yeah,
an unexamined spiritual life
agree.
is not a life worth living.
Well, I have something also to add, which is mind blowing. And I think this is so important that we're having this conversation because if you don't talk about the things that kind of, let's say, people are sensitive to,
Yes.
then they will never be educated on it. And so it's so important. There might be people, yes, who are turned away, but there's going to be more people who are tuned in and they thought maybe like Jamie did, and then they're like, wait, maybe I can find spirituality in another way or religion in another way. And religion, the actual word and the word yoga, they're synonyms. They actually
Ah,
mean the same exact thing. Religion, broken down in Latin, is from the two words re-ligare, which means to go back again, to reunite. And yoga
Wow.
comes from the root word yuj, which means union, yoke, reunite. And both are to reunite with your godhood. We can call it spirit, soul, whatever name, right? But the energy in you will say, because that's just like such a pure, clean um word. So, or divine energy, we could even say. And that it's literally, both of them were designed to bring you back to your wholeness, to reunite you to who you truly are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about union versus separation. So religion and yoga aren't the problems, it's how they're being used, right? And so
mhm.
when they come into the hands of people who want more power, who are greedy, who are not even evolved or unified and realized within themselves, and they become the leaders, that's where all these problems stem from, right? And then they even lead to wars, because even in yoga, I don't know if you know about the whole yoga world, but there's so much corruption there. You find the biggest leaders, and they've been doing the same as the priests in the,
Yes.
yeah, exactly the same thing has been going on. I was even a subject in one of my classes to one of my studios who I worked for, the male instructor and owner was inappropriate with me. And then later on, I heard massive stories about that with tons of women. And the list goes on and on and on. So so corruption, it exists everywhere. But what happens is then we're like, yoga's bad, religion's bad, right? Because it has a bad rap, which is what you
Yeah.
did. You're like, I'm going to reject it all. But when we start to realize that the true religion and true yoga and true spirituality, it's within us. And
Mhm.
so when we find a place, and for Paige, it's a church, let's say, for me, it's my yoga mat and nature. And for Jamie and Paige, I think you both said nature, but whatever it is, wherever it is, I always say, when you find a living example of someone, I don't care if it's a priest or a rabbi or a guru or anybody, if they're living the peaceful life and they're walking the walk and you're around them and you see that it's consistent, those are the people that you want. Those are your tribe. That's the people you want to commune with and be around with. That's your religion, that's your spirituality, that's your place of worship, let's say. And it could just be somebody's house, or it could be going on a hike. So
Yeah.
there's really no place you have to be. And I think if we take out all that we have seen and known about all these constructs, and we just understand what are these disciplines for, and at the crux and the core, they're really for you to find out who you truly are and be the best version of yourself, reach your greatest potential, and serve the world with that.
Ooh, I like that. I mean, I love that line of thinking that it starts with introspection. Why? So I can be of better service to the world, so I can make a difference. I can make a legacy here. Otherwise, I mean, are you just doing this for yourself only? Don't you think part of that involvement and self-actualization is so you can turn outwards
Absolutely.
and make your world a better place?
That's, yeah, that's the biggest. When I went to study in India on the ashram with my guru, he said to me and all of his students, and writes in all of his books and all of the teachings from the ancient scriptures, they all say, when the greatest service, the highest service that you can ever give and be, is you in your most high realized developed state. So I always make my mission to just be on that path of progressing, right? It doesn't matter if you're self-realized, it matters, are you progressing, right? That's all. Because getting there, we just, who knows when or what lifetime, it's just what path are you on. So me and my frequency, as it increases and increases, that makes a global impact every day. So what is your vibration? that doesn't necessarily matter. You could be the most gift, you could give gifts, you could speak to people, you could listen to people, you could give money to people, you could give service, but your own vibration and frequency, that is the highest service of all. And so that's why I not only make it the most important part of my life, but educating people on that as well.
So one of the, Paige, can I ask a question to
Sure. Go
follow up?
ahead. Go ahead.
So one of the things that comes to me, and this is probably, you know, some might say this is an indication of where Jamie's spirituality level is, but I've noticed that sometimes I will grow out of a relationship, and friendship, colleagueship, you know, whatever, intimate relationship even. I have found spiritual growth that has really kind of put me maybe in a different headspace or different energetic space than a friend or partner. Have you faced that in your life? How do you navigate that? Because, you know, at that point, that friend or partner might be, you know, you can love them and wish them well, but they might not be where they were in your life.
Yes, I experience this all of the time. So if you are growing, you're
Mhm.
outgrowing. There's
Just part of the deal.
Yep, they're happening simultaneously. There cannot be growth without outgrowth. It's like climbing up a ladder. You put one foot on the higher rung, and as soon as that other foot gets to the next, the lower rung is outgrown. It's
Yeah.
gone. Like
Yeah.
you're growing, and it's not that you're better than anybody else. It's
No.
just like you said, you've outgrown the relationship, and that's actually super healthy. It's the most healthy
Right.
thing. It's an
Well, it's shedding your
indication,
skin, right?
yes, that you are, and it's not easy. So that's why it's called growing pains, because without growth, it's when you're growing, the pain is actually from the outgrowth. And there's also pain from just being in the unknown, from being in different skin. You're like,
Amen,
who the
girl.
hell am I? I'm growing into you don't even know who you are because you knew who you were. So it's painful to just be in new skin.
Totally.
And that's why so many people go back and fall back to the default over and over and stay in the same relationships because it's almost easier to be in misery in what you know
Yeah.
versus
W now, yeah.
dealing with growing pains and being in unknown territory. This is what I help people with the most. I just designed an ebook and a course, and I'm helping midlifers go from midlife crisis to midlife creation because that's just what I did with my life. I went from crisis, husband dying, pandemic, closing studios, also being in the I wasn't in a conducive environment and in Detroit for my health and happiness and my growth. So
Okay.
I moved to the mountains, 47, left everything, got rid of everything I had. I only moved with my clothes and my two dogs. That's all I have here. Just not knowing anybody either.
Where did you
Never
move to
having
in the mountains?
I'm in Breckenridge, Colorado, never even
Okay,
been
so
here
several
before.
states away too, right?
Several states away. Yes. And I had to because I was stuck in a community that I had built in my yoga studio on my clients, and it had nothing to do with them. I had just grown. So, but I
Yes.
was still serving that whole community and staying in that um place that I've outgrown. And so it was stressful for me and it wasn't a fit anymore. And I knew it was time. So that was the only way for me to completely release the old and come into the new. And that's all that it is. So I help my clients move through these kinds of relationships all the time and just sharing that if you are on this path, get ready. Get ready because it is not easy when you outgrow people, places, and things. But I will tell you from experience, there is a way to still love the clients, the community, the friends, the family that you may have outgrown, that energy to have the relationship as it was. And then the relationship is redefined. It doesn't mean you have to discard everybody.
No, no.
So it's just the relationship changes. And what I see the most is that people stay in relationships way too long and they don't redefine and they don't release and let go according to their growth. And you can't really step into the new you unless you're able to do that. So there's a lot of work there. I recommend that you don't try to do this all alone if anybody's listening. I've had so many therapists, mentors, gurus for my whole life. I'm always surrounded by so much support. And even those support systems, mentors, therapists change all the time. I've outgrown therapists, I've outgrown mentors, I've
Mm-hmm.
outgrown
Yep.
programs. We were even talking about I was in a food 12-step program, and I remember that moment where I was being told something that just didn't make sense to me at
Exactly.
all. And it happened again. And then I got so stressed from trying to stay in this rigid
Yes.
place of rules. And I was traveling, and I remember my brother said, and he came from AA, so he said to me, Caren, what you're trying to do right now isn't practical. You're not going to be able to maintain that.
Exactly.
And I was like, well, what do I do? Stay at home and stay in a box and never travel because I can't exactly measure my food on the airplane,
Mhm.
and then I've relapsed. So I had, I knew that at that point I was so grateful for a program that helped me at a pivotal point, but you have to know when it's not working for you anymore.
That's right.
And make sure that even if people are saying this is the only way, you'll never get you're gonna blah blah blah. You have to, this is where this is the full circle, guys. This is where the power of self-belief comes in, is where you have to trust your intuition and you have to trust your belief in yourself. And sometimes no one else is gonna understand what you're doing and why.
Which is another reason to keep it to yourself between you, honestly, between you and God.
I mean, I think my family at this point, I mean, my mom was just out here with my sister, and there was some moments where she was just like, your father and I are so worried about you every day. I'm like, Mom, I'm 47. I've been great so far. I've made it this far. And I'm not, I'm taking care of myself, never asked you for a dime. I mean, what's there to worry about? But that's, it's sort of a mindset that's ingrained because I take such big leaps, and I just decided sell my house and move across, to other states. And to them, that's strange. But for me, it's exhilarating.
Mhm.
And that is the power of self belief. And I think that everybody can live this way, but it is a totally different paradigm than what we've been taught. And so a lot of
I
this is
agree.
just, it's not anyone's fault. And I realize that for me too. I learned a certain way to live. And then at some point, that's where spirituality comes in, where you're like, wait, is there's got to be another way. This isn't serving me. It just
Mhm.
doesn't feel right. There's got to be more. And that's again that question, that inquiry of when you start thinking there has to be more to life than whatever is going on right now. And hey, I was in an 8-year relationship. That was my first marriage. 8 years. The entire time I knew it was wrong from day one. And it took me 8 years to get out. So now my growth is to the point of the moment I know something's not right, I do not hesitate. Not even for a moment. I'm like, bye with love. This isn't working for me anymore. And it's way more loving and kind when you do that right
I
away,
agree.
when you know, than
I
Right
waiting.
away.
agree.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally agree. And there is a spiritual component to that, too,
Yes,
following
you're letting
that.
the other person. My husband, my ex-husband, I will just share this because it's so impactful. I was so resentful, which I did let go of, but for many years because of what he did to me until I took responsibility for it and my part. At
Mhm.
that point, then I was just, he had reached out and I never, ever, ever responded. And then he reached out to me. This was just maybe a year ago or two. And he said, I just thought you should know, since we were married, that I have colon cancer and it's stage 3 or 4 and whatever it was, right? And of course I felt really bad. So I just was kind and said, I'm so sorry, whatever. And we kept in touch a little bit here and there. Turned out he recovered. Just after that, he was an addict. He was a drinker. He did
Mhm.
drugs. That's one of the reasons main reason I couldn't be with him. And so he came to me after his recovery from cancer, and he wrote me a letter that said, I just want you to know, he said, remember when we were about to separate and you said to me, um, your father died because his dad died and he was sober for a little bit, but when his dad died, he relapsed. And I said, I'm not going to tolerate this behavior anymore. And he's like, my dad just died. How could you do this to me? And I said, well, life is tough and there's going to be your grandma at some point. If she dies, then you're going to do this again. And he brought that up and I had forgotten about it. And he said, remember when you said that? He goes, well, my grandma is really sick and she's in the hospital and she's about to die. And he said, and I'm completely sober. And I'm very happy and very proud to be. And I just want to thank you for that. And I never saw that coming, right? But you never know how letting go of someone who's in an illness or a sickness, when you stay with them, it's enabling them to stay the same. And I didn't leave him for him to change, but he did eventually.
Yeah.
And that was such a gift for me to hear a decade later.
Sure. That's what I call
Praise
living
God.
long enough to hear the rest of the story. Because,
Yes.
now at 62, I've started living long enough that I'm starting to have these stories like
Full
that
circle.
come back around. A couple of comments I wanted to make about what you were touching on earlier and about staying stuck in places. We talk a lot in our program about how the brain likes the familiar and it will do everything in its power to keep you in the familiar because it detects change as danger. And
Mhm.
so it really, especially people with addiction, man, they're just going to stay in those same patterns, even though it's head bang, ow, head bang, ow, head bang, ow, because it's the most comfortable and it's what they know. So I do appreciate that you brought that point up. And so we work a lot with identity shift,
Mhm.
change, and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and recognizing that when you get uncomfortable, it's a positive sign of growth. It's a attaboy.
Yes.
That means you're doing good. So don't be afraid. Be like, oh, goody, I'm making steps forward. This is what progress looks like. And whenever you can tap into that change, and even since we're talking about spirituality, one of the things that we feel like is that whenever you can tap into that spirituality and do that introspection, it allows you to become your true authentic self. And then when you're this true authentic self, then it goes into what we were talking about before, where you can turn outwards and be in a position to give to others in a much greater, more beautiful way, which really enhances your own life the more that you're giving and serving others. So that I just wanted to comment on that. But one of the things that you brought up is that you had had your own struggles with food in your lifetime. Was there a way that you were able to weave spirituality into your healing journey that helped you along that path? Because I think you told me you don't struggle anymore with food or anything like that. So do you want to talk to our audience who are listening who are struggling with the ultra processed food? How does that spirituality enhance their journey? Where would they start with that? How did that look for you?
Well, again, so when there's a disconnect, when you don't know yourself, you're going to feel a sense of incompleteness. You're going to feel like something's missing. It's called a void, right? So everyone has it unless they were born self realized.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone has this void, but no one knows what it is. Now
Mm-hmm.
imagine, right? What are you going to do? If you feel a void, like something's missing, what are you going to try to do with the void? If there's a hole in you, you're going to try to fill it.
Yeah,
And so everybody is running after the world. They're running after things. They're filling up. And food is the easiest thing to make yourself feel
totally.
full. And that's
Yep.
what it was for me growing up
Literally.
as an adult child in an alcoholic home, lots of chaos, older siblings fighting, parents fighting. For me, that soothed me. Just put food in my mouth, put my thumb in my mouth, anything.
Mhm.
And I felt satiated. I felt calmer. I felt better, right? With all those nerves. And so, no matter what, life is stressful. It doesn't matter what is, I mean, the world is stressful. And if you're feeling a void, you're going to have something to fill it. And so that's where addictions come in, right? The thing is we know those don't work. They're only temporary. And that's where the problem is because at some point, I have a really small frame, but it doesn't matter who you are and how fast your metabolism is in your genetics. If you eat more and more and more, it's going to show up. And that for me is when I started to struggle with the addiction, is because I didn't think there was any issue with my binging and eating food to help calm my nerves until I gained weight in high school and didn't like how I looked anymore. And then that's where the other behaviors and the obsession with my body took over. Then I'm going to have to exercise more to get this food off. And the whole cycle began. And then I started just
Mhm.
feeling crazy because I was out of control. Right. And who wants to spend their life, eating and figuring out how they're going to, get rid of the excess food. And, so I really started my struggle in high school, but that was the same time that I picked up yoga because I had the anxiety about the test. And so that helped me right away. I went through so much, but I can share that as I developed my spirituality, myself, and as I started to probe more into what life is all about and why we're here in a way that made sense to me with my teachers and the books that I was reading, it was just aha, aha, aha. It was like a sponge, and I was just like, oh my God, no wonder. It brought me the answers to why I had started all of this in the first place.
Yeah.
Why did I get into this? How did this happen? It wasn't just my parents. It wasn't just um you know being in a household that was dysfunctional, because most people have that. It was, there was more to this, to the story. And so I started to uncover the truths of life. That's really what helped me to this huge void, to start to decrease that void, just knowing myself, understanding myself, and growing. And so it was a process. And that's why there was different
Yeah.
points when I wasn't spiritually evolved enough to outgrow my food addiction. I had to be in a 12-step program because I was out of control. I needed a sponsor. I needed help. I needed a food plan. And those things all served me. But because I was studying these truths and I was into yoga and I was on this path and I had teachers and
Felt good.
mentors, it was all like a culmination. And then I just remember the one time when, like, night eating was my thing, always at night to the refrigerator. It was like conditioned. And just one day, I didn't do it. And I was like, I didn't realize it until the next day. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't go to the fridge or have a whole battle, about eating more and what I should eat and what I won't gain weight by and all the things. And I don't, you know, going back and forth, the obsession. And I just was like, how did that happen? And it was just the right amount of growth. I outgrew
Yeah.
going to the fridge at night and needing to eat.
Yeah.
And I realized, okay, this is a progression. This is about progress. This isn't about all of it's going to be overcome in a night or a day. And so it really
Yeah.
was an evolution. But the spiritual aspect, that was so powerful in combination with all these other tools, right? And then the other tools I didn't need anymore because I had grown into a higher, state, really.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. What a great story to end on. Do you agree?
Yeah, excellent. And I really, I have, um, I think that's such an important note to share. And Paige and I talk about this all the time, how people, as they're in recovery, especially, obviously we talk about in sort of recovery from using food to cope with life. Um, there's different stages and levels of recovery. And some people earlier on need more guardrails than other people further in. And I think that also further in, you'll find, people are typically finding a stronger connection with their spiritual practices and spiritual life. And I think that strongly correlates to how they show up with their addictions.
Mhm.
Obviously, right? Just everything you just said. And you mentioned earlier about a 12-step, very restrictive program. And years ago, I had experience with one similar. And I remember thinking, this goes against like my soul. Like,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, well, that's because you're so addicted. I'm like, no,
Right.
no. Like, yes, but no, it's not because I'm so addicted. Like there's something here. So there are, thank goodness, there have been evolutions for folks who are coming in that do need guardrails. There have been evolutions in the 12-step world that moved away from those strict measuring, weighing, timing, food timing, abstinence programs. And now they're more, there's a program that has a lot more balance. That folks who love and need those 12-step structures and resources can find it, and it's a much more balanced program, that I think is a great solution for folks that are new coming into 12-step recovery for food use. So again, just, something that I love and I've seen in my own needs, people that I am inspired by in the 12-step world, they grow past that 12-step version of themselves, right? And then they start giving and receiving in other really beautiful ways. And I just like what you described. So Caren, thank you for your time and
Thank
your
you.
wisdom today. It's been really a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
wonderful. And we'll put your links in the show notes where people can find your books and things like that. And if you
Yes.
want to find out more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U. And we hope to see you there again soon. And thank you again, Caren. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys. Take
everyone.
care.
Bye-bye.